Good evening and welcome. The city reported 14,152 COVID infections, with 238 more people dead from the virus.
Most of the cases are locally acquired. Among them, more than 4,000 cases were identified through nucleic acid tests, and over 9,800 people tested positive using rapid antigen tests. Health authorities say although the infections continue to stay below the 20,000 mark, the numbers are still high and people should remain vigilant. On Monday, 190 COVID patients died in public hospitals, including a 42-year-old man with heart problems who had received 3 jabs.
The University of Hong Kong medical faculty estimates that more than 4 million people in the city have already been infected with COVID-19.
Faculty Dean Professor Gabriel Leung, who's also a government advisor, said there are now 2 ways the authorities can choose to handle the pandemic. Timothy Lee has more.
With COVID infections in the city on the decline, even though the daily caseloads remain high, the government announced on Monday plans to begin the first phase of social distancing measure relaxation. Professor Gabriel Leung, the Dean of the University of Hong Kong's Faculty of Medicine, said a new research estimated that about 4.4 million people in Hong Kong have been infected with COVID. But if there is no new variants emerging, and if residents largely refrain from going out, then the daily caseload could fall below 1,000 by April 21st. The study also expects the death toll to reach about 9,300. Far higher than the 3,000 or so fatalities. The government is planning to relax social distancing measures in 3 phases over 3 months. HKU expects that as the measures are relaxed in June and people flow increases, the 6th wave of the pandemic will emerge, lasting until August. Then another 2 million people will be infected, with about 1,500 additional deaths. Professor Leung also said there are 2 options the government can choose to handle the pandemic. The first option is the continuation of the dynamic zero policy. The second option will instead place emphasis on reducing infections and casualties, and treating those who are suffering from serious conditions. Leung said he is only stating the scientific facts and that it is ultimately the government's decision as to which option to adopt.
Endemicity, or living with the virus, is the common final path for the entire world. So I think that we shouldn't dichotomize the choice. Whatever choice we have, or any country or any population has, is for the interim, on an ad interim basis. The final common pathway is endemicity. Now, so I don't want to comment on or speculate what the government's signaling of intent may or may not mean.
While the global scientific community continues to share different ideas in combating the virus, Hong Kong scrambles with which ways to contain the 5th wave. Authorities must now make the tough decision on whether they will continue the dynamic zero policy or follow the lead of some other nations that have decided to live with COVID. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The ban on passenger flights from 9 countries is poised to be lifted next month, a move the business community has long anticipated. But several business chambers hope the government won't stop there, urging for continued discussions on border reopening, both internationally and with the mainland.
They say that's not just for the economy, but also for families forced apart for months. More from Jackie Lin.
For Hong Kong's business communities, the easing of travel restrictions has been long overdue, and they hope it's a first step for more relaxations to come. George Leung, chief executive of the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce, says many non-local talents have called it quits in face of relentless border curbs. Leung also believes it's impractical for both Hong Kong and the mainland to isolate themselves from the world indefinitely. The Hong Kong Small and Medium Enterprises Association, meanwhile, says the shortening of hotel quarantine periods for returning residents to 7 days has helped reduce the time and financial costs of business trips. Similar sentiments from the European Business Chamber of Commerce.
The opening up of Hong Kong is a very good beginning, a very good step, as long as it is it is supported by a very clear program moving forward. The business community needs a clear path for reopening and for relaunching the image of Hong Kong as a business and financial hub for Asia. If this happens, meaning if there will be a clear plan, Hong Kong will have a very good rebound.
And the border curbs don't just hamstring the economy, but also separate families for months. They include Ms. Feng, whose mother passed away in Dongguan in January. Unable to travel up north, not only did Ms. Feng miss the funeral services for her mother, but she also had to leave her elderly father to grieve alone. Travel agency representatives say to facilitate the border reopening with the mainland, the government should reconsider the mandatory testing exercise. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Despite the plan to lift flight bans on 9 countries, including the Philippines, a local agency says that may not help solve the shortage of foreign domestic helpers in the short term. Teresa Liu of the Hong Kong Manpower Agencies says it would take at least 2 months to digest the 10,000 helpers waiting to come to Hong Kong. She added quarantine hotels are running out of cheaper rooms and prices have gone up to $1,000 a night. Liu says not every employer can afford that for the helpers. She also said it's hard to get a flight ticket as flights will be canceled if confirmed cases are found.
A new study has found that receiving 3 doses of either the BioNTech or Sinovac vaccine can help cut fatality rates of COVID infections. The conclusion comes after the University of Hong Kong combed through data from COVID patients between the ages of 20 and 60. One jab of either the Sinovac or BioNTech vaccine is 2% and 37% effective in preventing light to moderate symptoms, respectively. With 3 doses, the levels of protection can be jacked up to 40 and 70%. In the prevention of severe cases and deaths, one shot can already reach some 60 to 90% efficiency. The protection levels can be boosted to around 98% with the 3rd dose.
The Hong Kong Council of Social Service and the Federation of Medical Societies of Hong Kong have teamed up to offer outreach vaccination services to housebound senior citizens and disabled people. The outreach team has started administering the Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine to the target group. The inoculation program offers around 10,000 slots for the vulnerable group to register, thanks to a $50 million donation from an HSBC charity fund. Around 300 people have already signed up to receive the jabs.
The Biden administration on Monday expanded existing U.S. travel bans against Chinese officials whom it accuses of repressing ethnic and religious minorities. The U.S. State Department said it is barring those targeted from traveling to the United States due to their involvement in crackdowns on freedom of speech and religion in China and abroad. The department did not identify which officials would be subject to the expanded ban, nor how many would be affected. In Beijing today, a foreign ministry spokesperson called the U.S. statement political lies and smear action against the Chinese side. Wang Wenbin said it's blatant interference in China's internal affairs. He added the U.S. should immediately revoke visa curbs on Chinese officials or face reciprocal countermeasures.
U.S. President Joe Biden again warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin may be planning a chemical attack in Ukraine.
He also cautioned business leaders in the United States to be prepared in case Russia launches cyber attacks against the U.S. and possibly their companies. Alan Buknia reports.
Addressing corporate CEOs at their quarterly business roundtable, Biden said Putin did not expect the international solidarity in response to his invasion of Ukraine.
We presented a united front throughout NATO and in the Pacific. The Quad is, with the possible exception of India being somewhat shaky on some of this, but Japan has been extremely strong, so has Australia. in terms of dealing with Putin's aggression. We presented a united front throughout NATO and the Pacific.
Biden also said that Putin's unsubstantiated claim the U.S. and Ukraine were developing chemical weapons is a sign he plans to use them himself.
And the more his back is against the wall, the greater the severity of the tactics he may employ. We've seen it before. He's run a lot of false flag operations. Whenever he starts talking about something he thinks NATO, Ukraine, or the United States is about to do, it means he's getting ready to do it. Not a joke.
Biden told the business leaders that based on evolving intelligence, his administration issued renewed warnings about a possible cyber attack.
He has the capability. He hasn't used it yet, but it's part of his playbook. And I've warned about the potential for Russian conduct to malicious cyber activity in response to the cost we'd impose with our allies and partners.
Alan Bookniet, TVB News.
Human rights groups are welcoming a declaration by the United States that Myanmar's violent repression of its Rohingya Muslim minority amounts to genocide. U.S. authorities made the determination based on confirmed accounts of mass atrocities on civilians by Myanmar's military. America's top diplomat says the atrocities include razing villages and sexual violence, torture, and mass killings of civilians.
There's no one the Burmese military won't come for. No one is safe from atrocities under its rule. And so, more people in Burma now recognize that ending this crisis, restoring the path to democracy, starts with ensuring the human rights of all people in the country, including Rohingya. Even as we lay the foundation for future accountability, we're also working to stop the military's ongoing atrocities, support the people of Burma as they strive to put the country back on the track to democracy.
The declaration could lead to additional international pressure on the government, which is already facing accusations of genocide at the International Court of Justice. Human Rights Watch says the U.S. declaration could also generate greater support for legal moves against Myanmar at the ICJ.
Back here at home, National Security Police have revealed more details about the recent arrest of 2 people in Jimsa Choi in connection with alleged seditious acts. 59-year-old man, male martial arts instructor, and his 62-year-old female assistant were arrested at a martial arts practice site on Sunday night. They were accused of leading an underground organization promoting Hong Kong independence. They were also accused of spreading inflammatory speeches on social media over the past 2 years, including calling on people to attend their Ghost Slayer Squad training classes aimed at teaching people to get prepared for a future revolution. Police seized various printed materials as well as weapons, including air guns, swords, axes, bows, and arrows from the practice site and their homes.
The aims of the class is very subversive. Saying example to targeting, to get yourself prepared and the targeting the Chinese Communist Party when one day is coming. The guys and the ladies is joining the class have a very prima facie case for us to investigating whether it is committed any national security related offenses.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.